Here we go. Welcome back to to another installment of Ask Eddie and Ann. Ann, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm having problems with tents in front of my building, and they have moved this guy 3 times, and he has come back for
Oh,
the fourth time. He just comes back the next day, so I'm at my wit's end.
God. Yeah, well, San Francisco these days, it's a little. I feel sorry for you.
Well,
The guy's just crazy. He's not dangerous, I hope.
no, but he has all this like crap all over the place. And Brendan, my friend, is walking with a cane now and almost fell.
Over
Trying to
this
get into
guy's
my over this
stuff.
guy's
Yeah.
stuff, yeah, to get into my building. So,
Yeah.
what can you do? I call the city, I call my landlord.
Yeah. And that's it. No direct confrontation.
Oh,
On my side of things, this could get interesting because out here in the burbs, I have my windows open because it's a little warm, and it may at times sound like the soundtrack for the birds over here because all of these crows have made a home in this tree in my backyard, and it's like uh, birthing season for the crows, and so it's just been a cacophony of screeching birds over here. And then I have these squirrels that run around on the roof of my house. And some of these squirrels must be getting kind of big because it sounds like a human running around up there sometimes. Yeah, I have a menagerie all over the place. I have, feral cats that come around. I have raccoons that come. I feed the cats, but then the raccoons come and they get into the food too. And we have wild turkeys that walk around. You would think, hearing all this, oh, I didn't realize Eddie lives out in the country, but I don't.
no, you don't.
But yeah, and these turkeys are amazing. I just sometimes walk out the front door and there's like 8 or 10 turkeys walking around in front of my house, just like looking for grubs in the ground and stuff. And it's hysterical. And yet I have never seen as slow and as stupid as they are. And turkeys are, I have to believe, the dumbest animals in the world. I never see a turkey in the road like hit by a
Yeah.
car or anything. They somehow manage to avoid that, or unless people hit them and then put them in the car and take them home and decide to save money at Thanksgiving or something. I don't know, but anyway, so that's my story. So if you hear a lot of noise in the background, that's what's going
Do you know why it's called a murder of crows?
on. Do you? I hope you do,
No,
because
that was not a rhtorical question. That was an
I do
honest
not.
question.
I
I
do
always
not.
wondered why it's called a murder of crows.
Yeah, I always liked that cartoon that had like the two crows sitting on the fence, and the caption was just attempted murder. It is pretty great, murder of crows. I know all those animal gang things are pretty good.
Huh.
A pod of whales or a gam. I know there's a gam of something. I can't remember what that is. Anyway, okay, let's get
Okay.
to the noirs. Let's get to the noir business here. People are antsy. They want to have their questions answered.
Okay, so why don't you start first with the question that we didn't write down so we don't know who submitted it?
Is that the one we were just talking about before we
Yeah,
started?
before we started, because
Okay, yeah.
I couldn't, you brought it up and then I couldn't find it
I
in my
know it's
folder.
funny because I know that we are behind because people have submitted stuff and it's like they're waiting around. Are these people ever going to answer my question? But one I saw come through the other day, and it was like, this is a pretty good question. So I'm kind of bumping it up to the top because we just finished Noir City, Boston, thanks to the fantastic Foster Hirsch who substituted for me when I could not go. Originally I thought I was going to be going to Europe right now. I was supposed to be in Europe at this point, doing what was going to be in Noir City, Paris, but that got, I'm happy to say that got postponed, not canceled, but postponed. Because I'm not in the best place to go traveling for a long period of time right now. So I was able to postpone that, and we'll do it some other time. I'm sorry that I'll be missing the Il Cinema Ritrovato Festival in Bologna, which I always love to attend, but so be it. So Foster subbed for me in Boston and reports that it went spectacularly well. 3-day festival, an abbreviated version of what we've done in other cities so far this year. And then in July, I will be doing Noir City in Portland. And as far as I know, I will be attending that one and hosting it and doing some fun extracurricular things as well up there. And I just finished programming the well, it hasn't been booked yet, but we've chosen the films for Noir City in Chicago, which is very early in September. But this question that the fellow asked was how we choose which films to show, because he noted that even though we tend to have a theme every year, we don't show exactly the same schedule of films in each at each venue. So how is that decision made? That was a good question. So it really is a combination of things. We try to stick to the theme, and this year's theme, of course, is Darkness Has No Borders, and we're balancing English language films with foreign language films that were somehow thematically linked somehow. But it doesn't always. Sometimes a theater that we're playing at will have shown a film that we wanted to show recently. Like I didn't show Le Samurai in San Francisco or in Seattle, but the new 4K restoration of the film was available by the time we did Noir City Hollywood. So I chose to show that. But there's no guarantee that that's going to show other places, because that's not a booking exclusive to Noir City. So other venues will show it. And if they have shown it by the time our festival rolls around, I probably would not include it. And you know, some festivals have a longer tenure than others, right? Seattle, I've been doing Hollywood is the one I've done the longest, then San Francisco, then Seattle, then Chicago. So some of the films have appeared in these places, and I don't want to repeat them if it's been within the last 5 or 6 years. So that's another thing. Sometimes we learn about a film because something that we do earlier in the year will trigger other people to say, oh, you know, you should have shown this. I saw a great print of it someplace. And that, wow, thanks. I didn't know that. So I'll take that tip and I'll add it to the program, you know, if it fits. Sometimes it's, you know, some of the festivals are only 3 days, while others are 7 and some are 10. And with the 3-day festival, it's so concentrated. You have to be very, very careful about how you program it. You do not want to have too many subtitled movies. I don't ever want to have 2 in a row in a 3-day festival. You know, I want to give people the opportunity to rest their reading for a while. You know, and sometimes if you're showing 4 films in a day, which is usually the case with the shorter festivals, you want to look for shorter running times on a couple of those films, and not exhaust people, because the hardcore fans want to see everything, but I don't want them to fall asleep in the last movie of the day. So and of course, if it's a festival that I'm completely in charge of, like the one here in the Bay Area and pretty much the one in Los Angeles, well, Alan Rohde actually co-programs that one with me. But with other venues like the Music Box or the AFI Theater in Washington, D.C., the programmers, you know, I work with them. It's a collaborative thing. So Todd Hitchcock at AFI or Ryan Osterich at the Music Box, we will we'll discuss what we want to show. And it's by mutual agreement. So that's it. That explains pretty much the whole way as to how these things take shape. So I already know what next year's theme is going to be,
All
but
right.
I'm not ready to announce that quite yet.
Have a ways to go.
I hear my neighbor taking out their recycling. I just realized I have to do that. That's what I'm doing after we do this.
All right. All right. So this question's from Paul. Would you talk a little about the differences between San Francisco noir and LA noir? I remember you referring to one as horizontal and one as vertical. Thanks. I love your work as the czar of noir and on Noir Alley.
Actually, Paul, I was referring to the differences between Los Angeles and New York noir when I flippantly said in one the camera goes like this and in the other the camera goes like this, so the between San Francisco and LA, it's just the claustrophobia. There's nothing claustrophobic at all about Los Angeles, whereas there is about San Francisco, and I'm sure you can attest to that. When you have guys sleeping in your doorway of your apartment building, you can attest to the city's claustrophobia, and it always was the case. Not the guys in tents sleeping outside your door, but things tend to be chock-a-block on top of each other in San Francisco. And of course, it's the geography of San Francisco is very different than the geography of LA. And just historically, in the classic noir period, San Francisco was used just to provide a little dash of difference, if you want to call it exotica or something, because it's just different without here's a classic example. One of my favorite films that we restored, Woman on the Run, was originally set in New Orleans.
Yeah.
That was where that story was supposed to take place. But by the time it got to Howard Welch at Fidelity Pictures, who did not have the money to shoot the film in New Orleans, but he knew that it had to have something unique and different to underlying the plot. He just said, we'll shoot it in San Francisco instead, because it was a day away, for the caravan of trucks and all that stuff to go from Hollywood up to San Francisco. And that had always been the case. When Hollywood came to San Francisco, it was quite simply just to get different looks, to take advantage of how photogenic the city is. And it's so small that, wow, when you think about it, back in the 40s when they were making, Dark Passage and Lady from Shanghai, and the city just wasn't as crowded. So it was much, much easier for a film crew to move around and to move their trucks around and all that kind of stuff. I remember when I was doing, for a while, we did a San Francisco noir tour, where we'd have a bus, like 25 people on a bus, and we would drive around, and we had video monitors, and I'd show clips, and I'd explain what was shot here and there. And eventually we had to stop because the city got so torn up and there was so much construction and it was so crowded that it was economically unfeasible, because you couldn't put enough people in the vehicle to make it worthwhile to do it. Because one time the last time we were doing it, the bus got stuck. It got stuck at Union and Montgomery, the classic intersection where you could go look north. That's where the house from House on Telegraph Hill was, and across the street was where Lauren Bacall lived in Dark Passage. And this house right here is where Barbara Bel Geddes lived in Vertigo. And down the hill there is where Tony Curtis lived in The Midnight Story. Marie Windsor lived around the corner in The Sniper. It was just, like, it was all right there in that one intersection, which people got a very good look at because the bus got stuck. The guy was a really bad driver, and he just couldn't get the bus around, and that was a disaster. Last time we did it. Anyway, so that's it. That's the answer to that question.
And would you like to talk about our current issue of NOIR City magazine?
our current issue of Noir City magazine. It's funny, and I'm already moved on to creating the next one. So it's like, which one we're talking about? The one set in L.A., right? Hang on, this is it. Dun, 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 dun. The current issue of Noir City magazine. Now I'm holding up the print edition, and as I will always explain, if you give $20 to the Film Noir Foundation or more, you will get this issue in digital form. You will not get the issue that all the content's the same, but you won't be able to hold it in your hand the way I'm holding this issue, because this one is a separate purchase that you get through our site on Amazon. And I want you to know, I don't know exactly when this program is going to air, but tomorrow marks the 50th anniversary of this movie, of Chinatown. Tomorrow, June 20th, 1974 is the day that Chinatown was released in, I guess, limited engagements. And then somebody was telling me the 26th of June was the actual national release date for the movie. But that issue of Noir City is all about Los Angeles. The whole issue is about movies set in Los Angeles as a noir state of mind, and what distinguishes LA from other locations. And it's personally, I think it's one of the best issues we've ever done. Imogen Sarah Smith, fantastic job editing the issue. Danilo Castro, fantastic job. They both have wonderful pieces in the issue. I have a list of my 10 I don't want to say favorite, but just 10 LA neo-noir films that I think deserve a little more recognition than they like. I don't write about Point Blank or Chinatown or LA Confidential. Everybody knows those. So I wrote about The Nickel Ride and City of Industry and some movies that are less known that I think people will enjoy. Thanks for the plug, Ann.
Absolutely. Okay, you want to do question 2?
Sure. This is Judy. I think I know Judy. Yes, I know you, Judy. Today at AFI, I saw the 2024 Netflix film. That's an interesting observation right there. So, see, Netflix and movie theaters. She saw Hitman. And she has a few questions. Is there a subgenre of film noir that could fit into comedy or dark comedy, neo-comedy noir? A film with enough silliness to edge it towards comedy, but it's also noir. And if so, which films? Thanks to you, we know it's a bitter little world, but how many instances of noir are there where the perpetrators get away with it? Okay, these are two different questions. Okay,
yes.
And I'm not going to talk much more about why those are linked, because I just spoiled it all. If you haven't seen Hitman, I think this Judy's second question might be a spoiler. Sorry about that. But so she's asking about comedy. Now, first off, Ann, have you seen Hitman?
I have not. Ted and I wound up watching Black Thursday, excuse me, last week, and then this week there's a more comedic noir, and it has Jim Cummings in it. We're gonna watch this week. So
what's that called? I don't know that one.
I cannot remember the name of it right now, but Jim Cummings, who I adore, is in it. So
I don't even know who's Jim Cummings. I don't even know Jim Cummings.
Did you watch Barry? The TV series Barry
with Bill Hader?
Mm-hmm.
No, I saw one episode.
Oh my gosh! Oh yeah! You need.
That's not a that's not a commentary on the one episode I saw. It's just that I happened to see one episode and I have not seen the whole thing.
Okay. So you might know he did a film called The Wolf of Snow Hollow, which he wrote and directed. He's actually a writer-director. He didn't direct this one, but he's also an actor. Which is a great film where they think people are being killed and it looks like a werewolf, but he keeps saying, it's not a werewolf. And his father's played by Robert Forster, and he's
Okay, that's recommendation enough.
Yeah, and he's an alcoholic who's fallen off the wagon. He's sort of having this nervous breakdown while he's trying to deal with his daughter, and then some guy killing people like a wolf. It's great, and he's just very good at striking this sort of humor and seriousness.
Now, is this a noir or a horror film?
Neither. Yeah, I would call it I guess it's a mystery.
Okay.
More than anything else.
And is it what year? Relatively new?
Like 3 years ago or so.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's like the first thing I saw him in. So this one, Ted showed me, I really want you to take a look at this first scene and see if you'd want to watch this next week. And I'm like, oh man, that's Jim Cummings. And he's like, who's Jim Cummings? And I had to remind him about Barry.
Okay. And so what is the name of this film with the werewolf or not?
The werewolf or not is The Wolf of Snow Hollow.
The Wolf of Snow Hollow. Okay.
And
you don't know the title of the other one that you're going to watch next week.
I'm blanking it on.
But if people are watching this, or they're like me, you're going to look up Jim Cummings, which is with a G at the end, right?
Yes.
Cummings.
Yeah.
I'll look him up on IMDb, and I will find out the title of that, and I'll watch it.
Yeah.
That sounds good. Okay, the film that I'm going to mention here in reaction to Judy's question is The Last Seduction with Linda Fiorentino, which is a movie that I thought was very funny. A lot of people don't find it humorous, but I thought it was kind of funny.
Yeah.
I thought Bill Pullman was really funny, and I think it's a very witty script. And it clearly, the impetus behind the whole movie was we're going to write a film in which the femme fatale is the protagonist and she gets away with it. I mean, now that I mention it, of course, Judy, and man, I hate it when, I have to assume that everybody that watches us do this, that we're not all like 45 and older or something. I want to think there are some younger people watching these who maybe have not seen a lot of these movies. So to say, I just spoiled The Last Seduction. Sorry about that. And there's another famous neo-noir film with a very memorable femme fatale who gets away with it. So The Last Seduction wasn't technically the first one to do that, but I don't want to name the film because it's spoiling the end, right? So those are two that I can definitely reference there. And as for the comedy of Hitman, I loved it. I thought it was the most intelligently and cleverly written screenplay I've seen in a while. Richard Linklater, who is, eventually people are going to give this guy his due because he's been doing his own films his own way for quite a long time now. And but when people talk about the great American filmmakers working right now, you rarely hear Richard Linklater in that conversation, and yet he just goes about his business making these movies for not a lot of money, and they're all really good. And some of them fly right under the radar, some of them are hits, but it's just funny that nobody ever talks about him as a filmmaker the way they talk about a lot of other, Scorsese or Spike Lee or somebody like that. But Linklater is really good, and this film is pretty ingenious, and it's very invigorating to see something that and I'm not going to spoil it for you because you haven't seen it, but it really, sometimes I can't stand it when they say, based on a true story. Like, who cares? Who cares? But in this case, it was kind of important to realize at the end that it was in fact based on a true story, because I had real problems with certain aspects of it until I didn't. because when it started, for like the first 30 minutes or so, I had a hard time suspending my disbelief that that the premise of the film is that this guy is a school teacher who dabbles in electronics and stuff, and he works with the police department on their surveillance. But the conceit of the movie is that one day the undercover cop doesn't show up for this job, and because he was suspended, and instead of calling it off, they send this guy, the teacher, in to play the hitman who's being hired by this guy, and he has to just wear the wire and get the guy to say, I'm giving you this money to kill this guy. And he does it so well that he like blows everybody's minds. Like, who knew this guy had it in him, you know?
Yeah.
And so the movie is really intriguing because it becomes about something very different. It becomes about, you know, the license mild-mannered people have when they're operating in the name of the law to suddenly become someone entirely different than who they are. And it gets into all the complications that ensue from that. And it's very, very well done. This guy, Glenn Powell, who plays the lead, he co-wrote it and he plays the lead and he's great. And just the whole thing is really good. So that's my thumbnail review of Hitman.
Okay, yeah, the movie I was trying to remember the name of is The Last Stop in Yuma County. Is a film with Jim Cummings that Ted and I are watching on Saturday.
Last Stop in Yuma County.
Yeah.
Okay. I like the name of it. I like it's a noir.
Yes.
Yeah, it sounds totally like one of those great rural, desolate, freaky noir movies. I'm in. Okay, might watch that tonight. Who knows?
Okay.
Okay, you go.
And this is from our friend Michael in Post Falls, Idaho. In the past, Eddie has expressed his fondness for the performance of Argentine actor Ricardo Darin in such movies as The Aura and Nine Queens. What does Eddie think of his role in the Academy Award-winning The Secret in Their Eyes?
It's a good movie. I don't like it as much as the other two. It's more traditional. It's more of a standard, mystery crime thing than the other two, which are more. Nine Queens is like a heist film, and The Aura is like a true noir film. So I like the movie very much. I would also, if you're into, I believe he pronounces his name Darin, Ricardo Darin. And I just think he's the most soulful actor. He's got the greatest eyes. And it would be weird if you ever put Ricardo Darin and Benicio del Toro in a movie together. It would just be almost too much. It would be like overload with these guys. But they'd be great as like cohorts on some crime or something. I would love to see that. He did a film called Carancho, the Vulture, which was great, where he plays like an ambulance chasing attorney in Buenos Aires. Buenos Aires has more car accidents per capita than any place in the world. And they turned this into a movie that the guy, would track down these accidents and then represent the families in these car accidents. And he ends up, anyway, I won't spoil it, but he gets a leg up because he becomes involved with a woman who's a EMT, and she calls him at the scene of the accidents, and then he comes, and she's a drug addict, and it's great. It's a really, really good movie with a very shocking ending. And I don't know if they ever did remake it in Hollywood. I know they remade Nine Queens in Hollywood with John C. Reilly, but I don't think they remade Carancho. There was talk about it, but as soon as they said that, I said they'll never keep the ending. They will never keep the ending of the original film. An American film cannot end like that anymore. Could have done it in the early 70s, can't do it now.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was from Michael in Post Falls, Idaho. And I want to thank Michael. He sent us a picture. Did you get the picture?
Yes.
That was nice. I was always curious. Like, I wonder what Michael looks like, and he sent a very nice photo with all of his noir stuff, his noir memorabilia, and everything around. It was great. So good to see you, Michael, and appreciate the questions.
Yeah, and by the way, speaking of Argentine films, I don't know if I mentioned this before, but man, there's a horror film that just came out from there, and yeah, when evil lurks, and it is incredible. And the main character, his performance is so incredible. I mean, the acting in this film is so good. But I have to warn people if you decide to watch it. It's a really great premise, and I didn't know what the premise was. I just liked another film by this director, so I kind of don't want to spoil it. But it's on Shudder. I will warn you, it has got some of the most grotesque practical effects. I mean, it's a really, really great story and stuff, but it was like there's some stuff in there that was just like, oh my god. But man, it was good. It was just really good. And I didn't until Ted and I watched it. At the end of it, he said, "Wow, that was the worst day ever." And I didn't even realize that the entire story had taken place in one day. Yeah, it is an incredible roller coaster events. Like,
and it's called Where Evil Lurks, or When Evil.
I think it's Where Evil Lurks.
Where Evil Lurks. Okay, I think Kathleen read to me a list of great films that came out this year that are overlooked. I think it was in Esquire magazine or something, and I'm pretty sure that film was on the list, and we looked for it but could not find it streaming. But you say it's on Shudder.
It's on Shudder, yeah. Okay. So that means it's also on AMC.
Okay. Oh, I didn't know that. Interesting.
Yeah. So anything on Shudder is available through the AMC Plus. Yeah.
I saw, this is really off the subject, and I shouldn't say it because I can't remember the title of the movie, but when I was at the Morelia International Film Festival, I saw a film that was really interesting that you might like. I hope it gets released. It was a first film, and it was in this section of films that were first-time films by Mexican filmmakers. And it was about a guy who's a newspaper photographer, and he has a curse put on him, and he starts losing his senses one by one. And it's very, very interesting film because the filmmaker clearly, it was an exercise for him to depict the lack of these senses in cinematic ways. And it's just like the film you're describing. It takes place day after day, day one, day two, and like he loses his sense of taste. And you're not much you can do cinematically with that. But then as it goes along, right, he's losing his hearing. He's obviously losing his sense of smell, and then of course it's all building up to sight would be the last one. And he has to solve the mystery and try to save himself before he loses all five senses. It was good. It was very, very well done.
Amazing.
Yeah, and it's embarrassing that I cannot remember the title of the movie. I apologize. I will do my best to find out the name and come back with it at a next installment. I hope it gets a distributor. It was pretty good. I'm sure it'll get picked up on streaming. I have no doubt about that. Okay, so Britt in Lynchburg, Virginia. Could you and Eddie and the entire Asking fan base provide examples of a very specific noir plot? I'm looking for noir protagonists who are not professional investigators. Oh, well, Britt, you're in luck. We've had questions like this before, but meaning no PIs, journalists, police detectives who find themselves taking on an investigative role. To be more specific, may we exclude films where the protagonist's involvement or implication in a crime incites their investigation? Leaving out Kansas City Confidential, DOA, High Wall. I suppose The Third Man would qualify for the noir category I'm thinking of. Although Holly Martin's is a pretty is he really investigating anything? I'm not sure. Um, and Britt says perhaps red light fits in that category. Can you think of any others? And this is the crucial part. She says bonus points if any of the protagonists are women. Well,
Okay.
obviously, Britt. Go ahead, Anne. Say some of the obvious ones.
Phantom Lady and Black Angel, which are both Woolrich stories. So I guess
Yep.
he liked women investigating things.
Absolutely. And I will even throw in Deadline at Dawn in there because Susan Hayward is really the one who kicks the plot into gear. I mean, the guy who's going to be implicated in the murder that happens is kind of a dummy, and he doesn't really know what he's doing. And it's Susan Hayward who is the active investigator in that story. I'll also throw in, even though she's not technically an investigator, I'll say Lured with Lucille Ball.
Mhm.
And I'll even throw in The Dark Corner since, well, that's a private investigator's secretary,
Yeah.
not the private investigator himself. But it's good to see Lucille Ball mentioned twice.
Yeah, absolutely.
Here. So I'm thinking if there are any other ones that should be pretty obvious, but as far as the women go, those are the obvious ones from the classic era. Um, I want to say, just to complicate things, isn't Memento a film in which there's an investigation? But I mean, he's investigating a crime, but it's so involuted. Again, I don't want to do spoilers, but that is kind of a unusual protagonist to be doing an investigation.
Yeah.
But that's also a neo noir. I think Britt was really looking
Going
at
for the classic.
Yeah. Classic film noir. You would have had the ultimate example would have been The Stranger, right? Where Edward G. Robinson he hunts down war criminals. I suppose that's a professional job, but I think it was one of passion for him.
Yeah.
But it was going to be Agnes Moorehead, playing the part, which she would have been, if that had come to fruition, that would have been clearly the most famous female investigator in a movie of that era. But nobody went for it. They said, no. Agnes Moorehead is not going to be the protagonist of this movie.
Well, really, I mean, Woman on the Run, I mean, she's essentially investigating, right?
Yeah. No, you are absolutely right. Yeah. Investigating the disappearance of her husband. You're right. So Woman on the Run, that's a good one. Bonus points, Anne.
There you go.
Okay. I'm sure that the fan base will if you're watching this on Facebook, I'm sure you're going to see a lot of things mentioned here. Hey, I'm going to suggest something. I mean, I don't often have the opportunity to jump in and comment when the thing is posted on, or when it goes live, quote unquote, on Facebook. But when we do these and we ask people to suggest things, I'm going to say, because I have gone back later and scrolled through looking for answers to things, right? I am going to suggest that people preface their response with a heading that says female investigator, and the name of the movie. Because otherwise it's just there and you don't know what it's in reference to. It's just like a movie title or something that people are throwing out there. So I know it's extra work and everything, but we want to provide value here.
There you go.
And so if you can find a short, a brief way to reference what the subject was when you're giving an example or an answer or something, I think that would be helpful to people look like Britt who are looking for more of these things.
That's a great idea.
I think you're reading the next
Am
one.
I reading next? Dave and Fiona. Not counting artists contemporaneous with the noir movement, are there any pop music artists that you strike you as noir? As children of the 70s and 80s, Steely Dan and Elvis Costello and the Attractions come to mind. As for the 90s, Portishead made a short film entitled To Kill a Dead Man, which may well be the first noir set entirely music. Alas, we're too old to remark upon anything in pop music since about 1994, but it seems to us that there may have been other intersections between noir and pop music that are worth mentioning.
Wow. Okay. Good question. Hey, Dave and Fiona, first off, two things. I want to give them bonus points for citing Elvis Costello and the Attractions. I mean, there's not many people who give the Attractions the credit they deserve as a great backing band, right? So good on that. And the Portishead reference is classic. I am a huge Portishead fan. In fact, it's funny. We rescued a cat one time, and we were leaving to go on a vacation, and we had rescued this cat, but we couldn't, we didn't know what was up. And I took it to the vet and said, I want you to keep this cat. I'll pay to have the cat boarded here until we come back. And they said, well, we can't. Is it your cat? And I said, well, I guess it is now, but it didn't even have a name. And so we named it Portishead. That's the cat's name. And they took a picture of it and had it on the wall of the vet's office for years. And it said Portishead underneath the picture of our cat. And then one day I went in there and I said, we've had that cat for 5 years. His name is actually Rumpus now. And they went up and they put Rumpus, the cat formerly known as Portishead. That was pretty funny. Okay, enough of that. I cannot remember the issue, but right, Noir City magazine had an issue devoted. It was our music issue.
Yeah.
And Michael Cronenberg did this fantastic cover that was like a imitation of Rolling Stone that had these, and it was all about musicians that we considered to be noir artists. And far and away at the top of the list, nobody else is even close, is Tom Waits. Tom Waits is the essential film noir musician, to the point where if you listen to his song Invitation to the Blues, you realize that it's Fallen Angel, that he actually clearly wrote this song after watching Fallen Angel, either in a LA movie theater on TV or something, because he name checks actors and characters in the movie, and the whole plot of the film is pretty much in the song. And just everything Tom Waits has done, especially the early stuff, is very, very noir. But so is Nick Cave, at times Johnny Cash. Jake Hinkson did a whole article about Johnny Cash, the Man in Black, and how noirish his stuff is. And I'm thinking about artists who do like noir storytelling in their music, not necessarily music. There are a great many singers now doing noir style albums and things. Our good friend Laura Ellis, who's sung at the Noir City Film Festival, is the Noir Nightingale, and this is a fairly common thing. But the people who totally live in it, Stan Ridgway. Have you ever listened to Stan Ridgway? I mean, he's very, very noir. He was in a band back in the day called Wall of Voodoo, and he wrote a song called The Big Heat, and his songs are very noir. Drive, she said, was one of his songs about a woman who pulls off a bank job and gets in this guy's cab, and the chorus is just drive, she said. It's a getaway thing. And yeah, there's a lot of these. There was a fella named David Olney who passed away a few years ago, I'm sorry to say, who did like a folk rock version of noir. Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds can be very, very noir. We also did a great article. Chris D, who was the songwriter and lead singer for this punk band, the Flesh Eaters, did an article in the Noir City magazine a couple of years ago about the connection between noir and punk rock, which I thought was really, really interesting because, Chris grew up under the influence of films and rock music, and the result was what he does, with the Flesh Eaters. So there's some. I'm sure we'll be getting many more suggestions.
Yeah, and actually, John Carpenter just released an album called Film Noir Themes that he did with his son, Cody Carpenter, and his godson, who is Dave Davies' son. His name escapes me right now what his first name is. But they've been scoring stuff together.
Yeah.
They scored the last 3 Halloween films, but they've also been releasing music. So he decided, I guess, to do one on film noir.
Wow,
so I haven't listened
fantastic.
to it yet. So I need to get myself together and listen to that.
Yeah. Oh man, I'm psyched about that. I mean, it's funny. I have a whole wall over here on my bookshelf, or a whole section of the shelf that's just all either film noir scores or jazz influenced by film noir, or and a lot of pop or rock music. I don't know how much pop music, and none of these things are. I mean, Portishead is certainly not pop music. I don't even know what some of this stuff, how to label it, but there's I don't know. I just find stuff all the time that kind of fits the bill. And it's funny, Elvis Costello is a big film noir fan.
Yeah.
And when I saw, I may have mentioned this before, but the last time I saw him in concert, when he performs Watching the Detectives, he does it as a whole tribute to film noir. And the backdrop on stage is all film noir movie posters, and they're all from my book, The Art of Noir. So it's pretty clear that Elvis had extra copies of that book so he could cut it up and make these, scan all this stuff to make backdrops for the stage show. Ben Mankiewicz told me a funny story that he saw Elvis in a concert in Santa Monica, and he went backstage to introduce himself. Ben is like that. He will use his notoriety as a host on TCM to get backstage and introduce himself to rock stars. I don't think he would ever do that with an actor or an actress or something. But Ben wants to be a rock star. That was his whole inspiration in life. So he went backstage to introduce himself to Elvis Costello, and he said, "Hey, Ben Mankiewicz, Turner Classic Movies," and Elvis, according to Ben, said, "Oh, that means you must know Eddie Muller." I thought that was pretty good. We're still working on getting Elvis on TCM to be a guest
really cool
on TCM. He's written before COVID, he had written a musical based on A Face in the Crowd, the movie A Face in the Crowd. It was all set to be like a whole Broadway production, music by Elvis Costello, and it still hasn't happened.
Yeah.
When he plays live, he does a few songs from it, and talks about how much he loves the film and how timely it is and everything. But man, I would love to see that actually happen.
Yeah. And I think the time is now for sure.
We may have passed the point at which it's useful.
Yeah,
I don't think anybody got the message. Okay, here we go. This is from Maribeth and JJ in Port Townsend, Washington. Okay, their first question, they have several questions here. The first one is, what is the origin of the term film noir? Come on. French, obviously. It was coined either in the late 1930s or in the immediate post-war years, just to describe, it literally obviously means black film or dark film. And the French coined the term for movies that had a very dark and pessimistic world view, right? I think it really emerged out of that poetic realism phase in French cinema. But then it became popularized when there was a festival of American films in Paris at one particular theater after the liberation of the city from the Nazis, and they celebrated, God love them, by watching all the movies that were embargoed during the Nazi occupation. And that's when people noticed that something had changed in American cinema, because and Nino Frank, the writer, said, like, what is with all the film noir? Like, why had it turned so dark? So that's the nutshell answer to that. And then they actually ask a question here, I see, about a technical question about the Facebook live stream, which I know absolutely nothing
Yes.
about.
So they were having a problem with that going back and forth between basically sometimes, and this may have been when it was there's a problem with the platform that we stream from onto Facebook. So that may have been what that was. And I've sort of changed how I set it up so that, because I know one time it just didn't go off. Like somehow they didn't, it's supposed to go off automatically and it didn't. So I had to go back and like manually start the feed, which was not great. So that may have been, that was probably that. Anyway, so I've kind of changed how it works so so basically Facebook is, never mind. Anyway, we shouldn't have that problem again because
okay.
how I set it up so that if something goes, we're not dependent. If something goes wrong with their scheduling system, it won't screw it up, basically, which has happened before.
I see. Well, let me use that as an opportunity to talk about why I hate streaming.
Okay.
Because I have found lately that one of the things that bothers me, because they tell you that streaming is so fabulously convenient for everything, right? You just boom. Oh, have you seen this movie? You like put it in the search thing, up it pops, you stream it, right?
Yeah.
But what kills me is this whole system has zero accountability, zero responsibility, because you have your Wi-Fi service that is required, to make it work. You have some other service that provides the connection for everything. I use a Roku in my case. And then you have the actual streaming network that you're connecting to, right? Whatever it could be, Netflix, Apple TV, Paramount Plus, whatever. When it goes haywire, nobody takes responsibility. It's like everybody says, "Oh, it's the other person. It's your Wi-Fi service is no good. Oh, your provider is your Roku or your whatever, your Apple Fire, whatever, that must be no good." Or like when I was watching Apple TV and I just could not connect to Apple TV, and it would, anyway, don't get me started. But it seems to me that for all the talk about this is the greatest invention ever and all this fabulous stuff, it's like, not only are you paying individually for all these services when it all used to come into your house for free, but they don't stand behind what they're doing. They're 9 times out of 10, they just say, "Oh, it's the other piece of the puzzle that's the problem here." Anyway, there.
Yeah, and it was funny because when they aired the last episode of Better Call Saul, when they dropped it, it was like I couldn't get in because basically I think so many people, it was amazing. But then I got in eventually, but it was really fun. But they basically, that last episode of Better Call Saul basically overloaded the system.
And it's also interesting because now I'm having a lot of issues with just signing on. You sign up for stuff, you give them money, and then you have to create the password. And then, I was trying to watch myself the other night. No, actually, it wasn't me. I was trying to watch, my friend Lee Langford suggested, "Oh, if you haven't seen Look in Any Window, this movie is crazy. You have to watch this movie." And I said, "Oh, where'd you see that?" He goes, "On TCM." So I went to the Watch TCM app.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to make it play, and it kicks me back out to say, oh, your local provider, your internet provider, you need to put in the information for this, which I did. But then it went one step further and said, oh, we see that this is part, that was the Uverse or something.
Yeah.
And then AT&T is saying, oh, you have to provide your AT&T ID number and password and all this, which, is not with me. It's no, I don't know what my AT&T ID and password is. So, I know the young kids are mocking me right now, saying, oh, you haven't figured out how to do a password chain and all that stuff. And it's like, no, why should I? I'm 65 years old. I've been doing this shit all my life. I don't need to just have a password for every single thing I do every time I turn around.
Okay, there is a app called lastpass.com. Okay. And basically you only have to remember one password, which is your password into their system, and they hold all your passwords so that you can have unique passwords for every single thing and not have to worry about trying to remember the passwords. You just remember one password, but it keeps everything secure so that you don't have to, it's just a lot safer. So you don't have to worry about, hackers figuring out your one password and then opening everything else. So anyway, people, that's my cure for that.
But what is somebody? I get it when it's my bank account. Why is somebody going to hack my TV? I mean, what? So they can watch crappy shows on TV? I mean, I don't get
Well,
it.
they can get into your account online and get your credit card information. For all those services you're paying for.
Do I sound like an old curmudgeon? Do I sound enough like an old curmudgeon now?
Get off my lawn.
I know, but enough of this stuff. And I'm watching one of these things, and it's like I'm trying to watch a baseball game, and the damn signal cuts out, like, and it's not. I just got a new service provider that promised me that none of that would happen anymore, and it's like, every 10 minutes it just kicks out and says you have no internet connection. It's like,
oh man.
Yes, I do. So anyway, okay, I'm going to stop now before I lose my mind. And
no problem.
Okay.
So
me now, right?
Is it? Yeah. No, it's me. 7. Conrad. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe Eddie does not particularly care for in-depth academic studies of film noir and prefers a historical and production emphasis for such studies. If this is true, what is it about those aspects of an academic intellectual approach to film noir that rings hollow to you?
Good. Your timing is good with this one, Conrad, because now I'm all hot under the collar talking about it. And so now I can talk about the failings of academia. Well, it's interesting, Conrad. I don't have a problem with an intellectual approach to film noir. That is not the problem. The academic approach to film noir, however, it's merely this is the problem that I have. I believe in universities there is they're trying to teach you how to think, and I find that so much writing about not just cinema but literature or just the arts in general is all a lot of theory and conjecture based on making a case for an argument that you want to make about what stuff means, or what it meant, right? So that's how you end up getting dissertations on film noir, because somebody watched like 20 film noirs and decided to pull out what they saw in them and then write a thesis on this is what it meant. This is what, and so many of these pretend to know the filmmaker's intentions when they really don't. Or they are, this was the problem that I ended up really having with the auteur theory, which was like being found responsible for something that you were not directly responsible for. If that happened to you in real life, you would hate that. And yet people say, Fritz Lang meant this when he did this or that or something else. In Lang's world, blah, blah, blah. It means this when Fritz Lang puts the camera there. And it's like, they're just completely ignoring the fact that somebody else wrote the screenplay, somebody else photographed the thing. They have no understanding of how movies are actually made. So when Conrad is suggesting I prefer a historical and production emphasis, yes and no. I just prefer that the people who are writing about it have a grasp of how the process of making movies actually works, because you might throttle back a little bit on the singular one person being singularly responsible for these films and their content, because that was certainly not the case. And so that's kind of been my modus operandi ever since I figured that out. It's like, I'm never gonna call a film, I'm never gonna say Joseph H. Lewis's Gun Crazy, because he doesn't own that film. He directed that film. He did not write the film. He did not photograph the film. He did not produce the film. He did not star in the film. All those people have an impact on the end result. And the director is the person who guides the whole thing. He's the conductor, right? He or she is the conductor of it all, and is the single most vital person involved in the production.
Yeah, and I think too, people also, the problem with trying to describe meaning, especially to films, is you have to have a lot of times people don't, it can be a cultural difference too that people don't realize. Like this film I was telling you about before, Where Evil Lurks, like a lot of people are saying, oh, so this must be like a metaphor for the COVID thing. And it wasn't. It was actually it was a metaphor. It was tied into the problems that are in rural Argentina, with the use of pesticides in the way that the central government sort of ignores these places that are rural. So it didn't have anything to do with COVID. It was something very specifically Argentinian about something there. So I think that's the other thing that when you're trying to describe meaning sometimes, is that if you're trying to pull in social meaning or something like that, you may be making assumptions that just that's not
right.
the way people were thinking.
Yes. And that's all. I have no problem with people giving intriguing and original takes on a film. That's not my issue. It's just I think in universities, in the course of training people how to achieve critical thinking, I think sometimes it turns into especially in academia where they have the publish or perish mentality. Somebody spends all this energy writing a big thesis, and you have to put all your footnotes in and all this stuff to justify everything. You're justifying everything that you say. And then other people come along and read it and just take it as gospel.
Yeah.
Like, oh, if enough people buy into it, then you're parroting a line that could very well be specious to begin with, because that's why I hate film writing where people are citing other critics all the time. As so-and-so said in their monograph, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, why do I care about that other monograph? To make your point. And all you have to do to make it more readable is just say, the film could be seen as, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people are going to assume this is a reaction to COVID, right? Like the film you're talking about. And you can just say that, and it's like, this is one way you can interpret this. But so many of these writers just are so declarative, especially when it came to that, the whole film noir thing about what the femme fatale meant and all that kind of stuff. And it was so narrow-minded and so easy. In a way, it was so easy. It's like, oh, look, men were away at war, then the women came home. All these movies were made in the post-war era. Therefore, they had to have something to do with men being pissed off about women and feeling emasculated and all. And it's like, nah, not really. Not really. You haven't done your homework, because if you watch those noir films, you know that, the women are the good guys in the movies 9 times out of 10, right? The femme fatale is the exception. So anyway,
Yeah.
I don't want to go too far off on a tangent, but all right, now we're gonna come down here. The last few questions we have are all pertain to the same thing. But we're going to start off.
Okay. Before we do that, I had a question that I added because it was someone who had sent in a question and said, "Hey, you're through the September questions, but my September question didn't get answered." And I've had a couple people do that. So do that because right now we're in October. So once we get into November questions, if you submit it in October and it did get covered, then email me.
Right. Well, right. Okay. So
that means somehow I missed it because I do have a spam filter. I go through that, but sometimes I still miss something. Okay. So this is from Dan. After listening to several years of Ask Eddie, I noted that Eddie occasionally responds that he will look into a matter more. We'll search out a movie as not seen and we'll follow up on something, etc. I would like to suggest an occasional special episode of Ask Eddie in which he updates on the results of these follow-up actions, sharing what he found out, his opinions of movies he's now seen, etc.
That's a really good idea. And we'll do that. We will do that. But that means I have to keep track of what it is that I said I would look up. And I'm still my DVD player is now broken. So I haven't seen No Name on the Bullet, which is sitting on top of the DVD player. And how many years has it been now that you've said you got to see No Name on the Bullet with Audie Murphy,
Yeah.
And and I think it was our friend Doug who
Yes, it was. Doug and I were just talking about this.
Yeah, and it's like when is Eddie going to watch this movie? And it's like, God damn, I mean, as you can tell, I'm having technological issues over here. With the streaming and the DVD player and everything. So it's a miracle I see anything at this point. But Dan, that's a great idea, and we will. From now on, when we sign off, we will say, so what are the things that we'll write down? What are the questions left hanging? And we will bundle them all up and do a special show just on the follow-up stuff.
Yeah, because the way I sort the questions is I mark them off when we've done them, so I can just unmark them if we didn't actually answer the question.
There you go. And of course, now that you've explained all that, Anne, the last 3 things on here are all new. These are all new because they all apply to one show that was just concluded on television, and everybody weighed in on this. But I would like to start by reading this first one from Steve.
It made me happy.
in Exeter, New Hampshire, because this is pretty funny. So bear with me, audience. Here is Steve weighing in. On June 24th, 1947, Private pilot Kenneth Arnold claimed that he saw a string of 9 shiny, unidentified flying objects flying past Mount Rainier at speeds that Arnold estimated at a minimum of 1,200 miles per hour. Arnold's description of the objects also led the press to quickly coin the term flying saucer. Regarding the classic noir clips interspersed throughout Sugar, he says, Sugar is a semi-documentary, written, directed, and starring beings that arrived here during the classic film noir years. They liked what they saw and easily identified with the isolated and often lonely noir characters. This is the reason Sugar himself decided to become a detective in Los Angeles. Most of those beings left our planet in 1968 when Dan Duryea starred in The Bamboo Saucer. Just broke their hearts. The rest stayed a while longer.
It's a terrible movie. I own a copy, but it's a terrible movie.
I know. As world's greatest Dan Duryea fan, you had to watch The Bamboo Saucer. In all seriousness, though, I believe the clips just added to the intrigue. What are your thoughts, Eddie and Anne? Anne, did you ever end up watching Sugar?
I have not watched Sugar.
Okay. All right. Well, now I got to say, I mean, now that you've had the big reveal completely spoiled for you, it's hard to say what somebody would get out of it once they know what the premise of the show is. I mean, it's great watching Colin Farrell and uh, Amy Ryan. That's good enough, but I don't know that it completely holds together. And then Doug in New York City weighed in. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but he says he feels that the clips of the classic noir films that were interspersed throughout the series were meant to suggest that much of Sugar's ideas and notions about being a gumshoe had been formed by his watching vintage noir films, and that he was patterning his behavior on the detectives he saw in them. Well, that's what I thought at first as well. But there wasn't always a correlation between what was happening in his storyline and what you were seeing in these old clips. And then Doug said, I thought the series showed promise when it started, but I admit to being disappointed to the point of annoyance by the above reveals. And then Eric in Atlanta, Georgia, says that once I saw the reveal, I assumed that he researched how to be human from watching old movies, and the clips were references for him on how to react. Well, all good points, and all, I think all totally valid up to a point. I mean, I initially thought when I started watching the show, very first episode with the there's a thing with his hand. There are several clues at the very start of Sugar that get you thinking that this guy is not a human.
Yeah.
Right. He catches a fly with a pair of chopsticks, which, if you're not Bruce Lee, you can't do that. Yeah. So even if you're Bruce Lee, you can't do that. But and there was, his hand is sort of short circuiting.
Yeah.
At one point early in the show, and he recovers so quickly from beatings and things. It's like, okay, something's up with this. And then when they started putting the clips in, I assumed that he was an android. And my take immediately in the first couple of shows was, oh, they're doing a variation on Blade Runner, where it's not the dystopian Los Angeles, it's the Los Angeles that we know. And somehow this guy's an android. And I thought the whole show was going to reveal like who's behind putting androids out there. I in typical contemporary fashion, I thought there was going to be like some conspiracy of crime solving involving, the placement of androids within our contemporary society. Then as it went on, I started to realize, oh, this is leaning more towards alien than android. And of course, I was ultimately disappointed with the show because I thought it wasn't as profound as it could have been. Because at a certain point, I really thought the profundity of it was going to be that human beings cannot possibly live up to the way they depict themselves in movies and things. And so while the android / alien was filled with these images from movies, he was constantly disappointed that human beings didn't act appropriately, like it was better to be, like being human was the dreaded thing. Like, and this is what's interesting, that the show in the end was like the aliens had to hide from the humans because the humans were a bigger threat than the aliens, which was a subversion. You're seeing this more and more now, I think, in science fiction and stuff. Like the aliens aren't the problem.
Yeah.
We are the problem.
Hey, that's right? What the day the Earth stood still did.
Well, you're right. That was ahead of its time in that regard. But if you remember, like Arrival, did you see Arrival, the Amy Adams movie?
I did not.
I'm not a huge science fiction fan, but I loved Arrival because it was about language and communication. And, I mean, that was a great thing in Close Encounters where they communicated through the chords, the music. That was very, very cool. But it's even more complicated in Arrival. And it got in the whole concept of time. And it was just, I loved that movie. I thought it was a great, great script. And I thought that Sugar was going for something at that level of profundity, but using these genre conventions to get there. And in the end, it didn't really do it for me, And then it had to resolve in a way, of course, that left it open that there could be another season of it.
Yeah.
Which I just cannot. I have a very hard time with that now. Like I when I watch stuff, I want closure.
Yeah.
I don't just want it to go on and on. Then it's just about money. Then
Yeah.
it's not really about the story. It's just about we can make more money out of this. And Colin Farrell was great. I got to say, Colin Farrell was great in that show. And he didn't have to do anything. He just had to act like Colin Farrell, which was
Yeah.
a real. I'm sure he found that very enjoyable.
Yeah.
to drive that cool Corvette around Los Angeles and to never lose a fight.
Yeah.
I'm sure he had a ball making that show. Anyway, that's my. What else are you? Maybe we should also do this regularly. Like, what are you reading and what are you watching right now, man?
So let me think. Right now I am on The Boy Who Followed Ripley. That's what I'm reading because I've been rereading the Ripley series. And I just finished watching. Yeah, the weird thing that I'm watching is there was a anime TV series, Agatha Christie's Great Detectives. So it's about this girl, Maybelle, who has a little duck that she carries around in this like little basket. And she's Raymond West's daughter. So she's Jane Marple's great niece. So sometimes she's with Jane Marple, but then she wants to be Hercule Poirot's assistant. So she's going back and forth, and there's like these like adaptations of these different Marple or
and these are animated.
And it's anime, and she has like big eyes, and she's 16 and she's finding her way in the world, and she has the duck. The duck is really adorable. But like and they're like half an hour a piece, and they just did the ABC murders like in 4 parts, and they're really good. I mean, they're really good adaptations of the stories, and it's on YouTube. So I've just been watching that because it's 30 minutes, so it's enough. Like I don't have a lot of time during the week to watch something. Like I just want something to watch while I have dinner. So I've been doing that.
Cool.
But they're really weird, but they're good.
Did you see? I'm sure you were. If you had seen it, I'm sure you were very excited. If you hadn't seen it, then I'm thrilled to tell you that Vince Gilligan is doing a new TV series starring Ray Seahorn. She is going to be the star of the new series. So I'm very excited. I have no idea what it's about, but that is good news.
That is great news. I'm so happy.
Yeah. So in addition to watching Hitman, I also watched this new movie, Love Lies Bleeding. You heard about that?
Is that the one with the bodybuilder?
Yes.
Yeah. No, I've not. Oddly enough, I've not seen that.
It's part of that very, very slim but very vivid subgenre of lesbian bodybuilder noir. And I'm telling you, the filmmakers and Rose Glass is the director, and she does a really, really good job with this movie. It's very, very strong, very entertaining, very unique and original. Kristen Stewart, and her name is Katie O'Brien, the bodybuilder who actually is a real bodybuilder.
She's a real bodybuilder, so people know she really does bodybuild. She's an actress, but she also bodybuilds.
No joke.
That was not. I've seen fit photos of her.
Yeah. Holy
that's
cow.
Not CGI.
And she's good. She's really good. She's a really excellent actress as well. And Ed Harris, who the the Lifetime Achievement Award for Ed Harris cannot come soon enough. This I'm really people who are watching this who also watch TCM and go to the film festival and everything. I'm really campaigning for Ed Harris to be at the TCM Film Festival because at this point the body of work is so strong and he's lasted so long, and he's still just doing impossibly great work. And he's the bad guy in this movie, and he's just spectacular in it. But it was really good. And there's a essay coming in the next issue of the Noir City magazine where this film is sort of the centerpiece of a thing looking at lesbians in noir, which it's not that long a piece because there aren't that many, right? I mean, you got Bound, and it kind of, the story kind of tracks from Thelma and Louise to Bound to this, but of course the relationship in Thelma and Louise wasn't played as obviously a gay thing, right? Or a queer thing, as the author says. But it's really interesting. I thought it was a very engrossing, very strong film, and I think this Rose Glass, who directed it, is really good. She had a very interesting approach to scenes, the way she get in and out of the scenes, and she had kind of her idea of subjective cinema is going to freak some people out because it becomes kind of like a horror movie. Because the bodybuilder is a steroid user, and when she uses, the film becomes different. It becomes, you get a sense of what she feels like, but they show it, and it like graphically, she becomes like the She-Hulk and all this stuff. And I mean, if you don't get that that's her brain working, and you think this is like a real superhero movie, guess again. Anyway, so that's good. And I'm reading a book called Blacktop Wasteland by a very acclaimed new writer, Sean Cosby. And it's like African American noir, and it's good. I haven't finished it yet, but it is really, really good. He wrote a book called Razorblade Tears that I have not read yet. But he's sort of doing African American noir, where Walter Mosley did African American detective fiction. And it's strong. It's good. I'm sure it will be adapted into a movie shortly, and I'm enjoying what I've read so far. That's it.
All right. Okay. We're doing things. Oh, did you see the movie? I was just thinking because you were talking about lesbian noir. One of the Coen brothers made it. I don't know.
Yeah, it's called Drive Away Dolls.
Drive Away Dolls. Did you see? I saw that in the theater. Did you see that?
I have not seen it yet. I will get around to it at some point. I mean, the backstory to that movie is more interesting, or it could be more interesting than the movie. I can't talk about the film. I haven't seen it, but yeah, written by Ethan Coen. I'm embarrassed to say I can't remember his wife's name right now, but she is gay.
Yeah.
And was the editor of their films for years. And then he like asked her out, and she said, I have something to tell you, but it didn't stop them from getting married and having a child.
There
right.
You go.
So,
because I assumed when I watched it, that it was written by a lesbian. I mean, that was my, assumption. You could tell it's definitely not that feeling of when men write about lesbians. It felt like a lesbian act. I just assumed that the writer was a lesbian. It's fun. I mean, it could have used some tightening up here and there, but the performances are very good, and the relationship between the two women, because they're close friends and they wind up on the road being pursued because the car they're driving, someone else was supposed to pick up, and it has something in it that people are after that are very dangerous. But it's a fun movie. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I will give it a watch at some point. It's kind of interesting, women didn't get to make movies in the classic era, so you only saw male gay characters in the classic era, except for Lauren Bacall and Young Man with a Horn.
Yeah.
As far as American movies go, I mean, you saw uh, you know, queer women in foreign films much more than you saw them in American films. But now, fortunately, women are more involved in the business at every level. And so obviously there's going to be more of these movies being made because there's just a certain percentage of the talent pool. That's what's going to happen, right? So that's kind of what this story in the next issue of the magazine is about, because obviously Thelma and Louise was written by Callie Khouri and directed by Ridley Scott. And then it's funny because then you get Bound, which is a whole other thing, right? Because the
Yeah.
Wachowski brothers were guys when they made the movie, but they're not guys now.
Yeah.
Lana and Lily Wachowski now. So that makes the gender politics and stuff of that movie very unusual,
Yeah.
completely unique, shall we say?
Yeah. Yeah.
But then this movie is something else entirely. I mean, and to say it reminded me very much of pulp novels from the 50s and things. That seemed to me to be what its inspiration was. I have no idea if that's true or not, but it felt to me like I have read several of the older lesbian pulp fiction stuff from the 50s. Patricia Highsmith.
There we go.
But it was just it just had that quality. It felt like a female Jim Thompson story or something,
Yeah.
and they make no concessions. That's what I really enjoyed about it. It's tough. It's tough and it's violent and it's unpleasant and there was no attempt to make these women like victims or uh, or to give them some unearned nobility. They're noir characters.
Yeah.
They're desperate. They do stupid stuff, and that made it a very liberating film, I thought, for somebody who's into noir.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say because I there's several, not more than a lot of horror commentators that I watch on YouTube, and they all liked that movie. And it's always interesting for me to see the films that they all like that aren't horror films. It's always kind of interesting, and they all liked it and thought it was a really great film.
Yeah. Well, there's a horrific aspect to certain parts of the movie, which I thought was really good because roid rage plays a big part in it. When you take these drugs, they alter your body chemistry and it can lead to very serious problems. And they do not they confront that directly, and I thought that was pretty cool. Anyway, it was good. What can I say? If I start watching a movie at 10 o'clock at night and I'm still awake, by the old man that I am, is like, oh, that was good. And Kathleen watched it with me, and she normally, I mean, obviously it's because they were women who were the protagonists, so she had kind of, where is this going? She was really interested in it. If it was guys, she would have probably been turned off by the violence.
Yeah.
And like, oh, this is typical macho crap, But this had a different spin that she hung with. So yeah, I do recommend it.
Cool.
Okay, we have done a 90-minute show again. Jeez.
Yeah.
Okay, I have no idea when this one is going to air, but I have a feeling
27th.
27th. Okay, very good. Yeah. So I'll have next time. Maybe we'll do I'm around now, so
okay.
I can do another one next week or something, and we can try to catch up.
That sounds good. We'll get a recording set up for next week so we can get on track. Okay.
Okay. Very cool.
Cool. And how do people get the magazine? Because you mentioned getting
people get the digital version of the magazine by donating $20 or more to the Film Noir Foundation by going to either www.noircity.com, www.filmnoirfoundation.com. Either of those will get you to a contribute page where you can drop $20 on us for our efforts to rescue and restore films or more. And we will happily put you on the mailing list, but you have to sign up for the mailing list in addition to making the contribution, because we have to have that email in a different file than we have the contributions. And then we'll send you the magazine. Or if you're, if you're a spendthrift or something, you can just go to Amazon and buy it in print. But as I always say, Amazon keeps all that money. We only get a few nickels and dimes out of that. So, although it is beautiful,
Yeah,
it
it
is
does look
beautiful.
nice.
I'm just
You
gonna
do a really nice
tease
job. It's
people.
pretty.
There's the LA issue. This was the issue before that, I think. And yeah, we got some good issues. This was the Hitman issue, which of course we had before the movie Hitman came out. And if we had waited, we obviously would have included Hitman and that. But it seems like every other week a Hitman movie comes out. So we're not.
Okay, and just to let people know, tickets and passes for NOIR City, Portland are on sale. Just so you know that. And it's the Hollywood Theater in Portland. So
Which is fantastic, which is a beautiful, beautiful venue. So I have already gotten some emails from folks who are traveling, making it a destination event and traveling there to do that. So it'll be a lot of fun.
So everybody go to Powell's Bookstore while you're there.
Oh, absolutely. The Mecca. Okay. Anne, it was good to see you again. It's good to see either Charlotte or Emily sitting back there on the couch. I don't know which one that is.
That one is probably Charlotte, and then Emily's on the red pillow, but you can't see her because she's out of frame.
Okay. Gee,
Yeah.
even you had to think about that.
Yeah, Charlotte's been sick, so she's been sneezing constantly.
I'm sorry to hear that.
I know.
My great niece graduated from UCLA last weekend, and we traveled down there to go to her graduation. And Tizzy, of course, made the trip with us, so she's still, the traveling cat. She really enjoyed her hotel room. I have a great picture of her sleeping in the middle of this gigantic bed. So she's living the life. That kid's living the life, Anyway, and we'll see you next time, everybody. We'll see you next time. Thanks for watching, as always.
Good night.